No, quarantine is not optional, and I'm gonna tell you why. Everyone get a good look at my double chin. Welcome back. Hi guys, I know it's been a minute, and by a minute I mean like a couple of months, but we are back, and I wanted to come back with a video that was directly inspired by your guys' questions. So you asked for it, and here it is. Also, make sure to keep your eyes open during this video for little hidden clues about our next big surprise on the channel. But before we get started, let me address the big elephant in the room. The big question on everyone's mind is quarantine optional? And in my humble opinion, the answer is no. Now let me explain why. The quarantine is not just a period where your new bird stays completely away from your current flock. It's so much more than that. While protecting from disease is our #1 priority during the quarantine period, it's also a great opportunity to start studying your new bird, really get to know their personality, check on their health and well-being, and really start to build trust in a relationship with your newest flock member. Our birds are a huge and long part of our lives. They spend years and years and decades with us. So for me, it's worth spending 30, 45, 60 days building a great foundation, building trust for a lifelong relationship. Okay, now that we're done with that, let's get to the fun stuff. So depending upon your household, there are a couple different avenues you might want to go down when deciding on where to do your quarantine. For someone who's bringing home their very first bird and you don't have a lot of other animals that could negatively interact with your bird, you might want to set up your quarantine station in a part of your house that provides an equal amount of quiet time and an equal amount of shared social time. What I mean by that is a place where your bird can see you going in and out, interacting in your daily life, and they can get to know you just as well as you can get to know them.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
These would be places where they can feel included in daily activities and where they can watch your normal day-to-day life. However, the flip side is you don't want to put them someplace too social, right? So for example, you don't want to necessarily put them in the living room right next to the TV if you're in the habit of staying up late till midnight watching TV. That's going to majorly disrupt their sleep cycle, and we all know how important 8 to 12 hours of sleep are for us, and I arguably think it's more important for our birds. This can help curb a lot of potentially negative behavioral issues that pop up due to a lack of solid sleep for our pet parrots. Now, if you're someone like me and you low-key have a whole zoo in your house, you're gonna wanna opt for a different avenue. The key here is you want to balance keeping your new bird away from other pets, but keeping them in a spot where you regularly go in and out of or have access to on a regular basis so that you can provide them that social integration, that feeling of being in the flock. During quarantine, keeping your new bird away from other animals, especially other birds, is great at deterring cross-contamination between animals. So this will limit the likelihood of passing diseases, if there are any in your household, from bird to bird or animal to animal. Creating space between your new bird and the rest of your animals also gives them a chance to start listening to the sounds of the house, including the sounds of the other critters in your household, whether that is barking, Janet, or Pioneus alarm calling, Bartley. Either way, it acts as a soft introduction for your new bird to the rest of their flock members. So they get to hear before they see, and that's very important when getting them used to other animals around them. So they feel like they're interacting, but they're also still in a safe place. You might even notice they start calling back and forth to each other. I've seen that happen where I've kept birds in separate rooms, and over the few weeks of quarantine, they will start talking to each other. They'll start calling back and forth, which is pretty cool to hear. So it's a great way of doing an introduction without having to worry about any claws, beaks, or blood. And one last note on location is as you're moving from your new bird to your current flock, you always want to make sure you wash your hands and even go so far as to change your clothes, especially if you're unsure of where this new bird came from. There's no disease testing panel you can look at, no blood test. You want to be super careful in protecting your current flock. So I always recommend trying to be as sanitary as possible and limit direct interactions between going from new bird to current bird and vice versa. Now that we've picked our perfect location for our quarantine, let's talk about quarantine cage setup. First and foremost, we want a completely clean slate or cage. You know what I mean. Whether that's a new cage that you just bought for your new bird or you're repurposing one you already have on hand, make sure to give it a thorough cleaning. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive for a new cage, but you never know what residue is going to be left on them from the manufacturer. So you do want to give it a nice little wipe down just to make sure you're offering a clean, safe environment for your bird. I personally prefer to use a bird safe cleaner called Absolutely Clean. It's something I get on Amazon. I will link it below, but I use it for everything from cages to countertops to even furniture when the boys decide to leave a little present behind and a little stain on my couch. If you're not into using a cleaner or you don't want to buy one, you'd rather use something you have on hand, you can use a dilute solution of white vinegar and water and it works just as well to disinfect the cage. Just make sure to look up the ratio online before you kind of concoct it yourself. I personally like starting with brand new toys and perches. It's definitely not because I hate scraping bird poop off of things. But it's also fun because you get to deck out their cage, you get to collect some new toys, some new perches. It's an excuse to go out and buy stuff for your bird, and which bird mom or bird dad doesn't love doing that? Anyway, thank God I have been hoarding my past 4 squawk boxes for exactly this purpose. I knew this was coming up, I knew I was making this video, so I've held on to the past 4 months and they are packed with awesome toy options for this quarantine cage. Not gonna lie, it's gonna be a weird combination of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Valentine's Day holiday decor in this cage, but we're gonna roll with it. If you want to hoard some squawk boxes of your own, I'll leave my link below. It does earn me a couple of dollars at no extra expense to you, and you best believe that I hand all that money directly over to Rudy. Do you run the show? Okay guys, I have to show you this one. It literally says Lord of the Wings. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. I think that's awesome. I think this was the January box. Okay, now that I have my holiday Mod Podge cage decorated, perched out, there are a couple more things to keep in mind during this quarantine process, specifically in regards to your cage. I am very frequently asked about cage sizes. And I think this warrants repeating in almost every single video. It's that important. Bigger is always going to be better. The biggest you can afford is going to be the best option for your bird, with one major exception. And if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you probably know what that is. Bar spacing. I always advise to take a look at the bar spacing, check out those measurements on this description of your cage to make sure that it's not going to be too wide of a gap where your bird's going to be able to stick its head through and get itself in some trouble. That can escalate into a very dangerous situation very quickly, so we want to avoid that and make sure our bar spacing is appropriate for our birds. Now that being said, for quarantine only, you can have a smaller cage. For example, if you have plenty of big cages you want to eventually move this bird into, but you want to use a smaller cage for quarantine, that's completely okay because it is a temporary setting. Just make sure you have that big forever cage ready to go once those quarantine days are up. I also want to specifically talk about the cage flooring. A lot of people have some strong opinions on this, and I can hear keyboards clicking already. You'll see that there's usually grates out there, there's newspaper options, there's natural substrate options, just to name a few of the different floorings you can use for your cage. In my opinion, during quarantine, I like to use newspaper. I prefer to lay newspaper directly on the grate during quarantine, and let me tell you why. The number one priority of quarantine is monitoring our birds' health, making sure that even if they are disease-free, the stress of the new environment hasn't impacted them in any way. A major part of checking out your bird's health is monitoring, as gross as this sounds, monitoring their droppings. That's right, we're gonna be studying their poop. And it's a lot easier to do on newspaper. Now, let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, time for science class. So I have this drawing here, and I'm gonna break down the anatomy of a bird poop for you so you know what you're looking for. And it kind of looks like the state of Florida. This green, sometimes brown part, depending on your bird's diet, is going to be the solid matter, which is going to be the feces. Usually within that, you'll see this chalky white paste. That's going to be the urates. And then around that is a liquid, usually clear if healthy, and that's going to be the urine. So these three parts make up the bird droppings, and that's what we want to look for at the bottom of our quarantine cage. And like I said, newspaper makes that a lot easier. But wait, there's more. I forgot during the bird poop section. There are some foods like beets that can change the color of your bird's droppings and can sometimes cause alarm, especially in a new bird owner. Always double check with your avian veterinarian if you are concerned, and take pictures of the droppings. Yes, be that person who shows up with pictures of poop. You're a great bird mom or bird dad for doing that. The second benefit of having newspaper at the bottom of your quarantine cage is helping you to monitor what and how much food your bird is eating. You can usually put your detective hat on and see if there's any veggies at the bottom of the cage or any pellets with chunks taken out of them, little bites, little nibbles. You can see if chop has fallen to the bottom. That usually means they've gotten into the bowl and are at least exploring and curious about the chop you're offering. So it's a great way to just touch base and make sure your bird is eating healthy, because they don't always eat when we're sitting there watching them like this. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm only gonna say this once. Weigh your bird daily if you can, not just during quarantine, but during its whole lifespan. This is going to really help you stay on top of potential health issues like your bird dropping or gaining weight too fast. This is also an excellent time to establish an avian vet, or at least do research so you know who is closest to you in case of an emergency. So you've set up your cage and you're ready to bring your new bird home for its quarantine period. Well, now what? Quarantine can last anywhere from 30 to 60 to 90 days. What do you do during that period? Stay tuned for part 2 and you'll find out. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there's a hidden clue as to the next big surprise on the channel. My question to you guys is, who do you think is moving into this cage? First person to guess correctly in the comments below gets a major shout out in part 2. I'll see you guys then. Bye, y'all.